I just try to think about being a leader and helping my students that choose to be extra leaders. We have like students that can basically raise their hand and they go through like a job interview, a job application to be a leader in the band. So it's not just kind of like, hey, you're my favorite, Holly, you stayed after school and got music stands. What I'd say is like, hey, Holly, you seem to be really dedicated to this. You should apply for a leadership job, get interviewed by some school district people, and I just like grab people off the, out of the lunchroom or whatever that are on staff, and we just interview the kids. But anyways, so the first thing I'm just curious is like, what do you think kids need right now? And it can be like right now in this little strange world we're in right now, coming out of all the COVID pieces and still going through parts of that as well. Or it can just be like back in the good old days before all that stuff. I'm just curious what your thoughts are first, and we can build off that or come back to it.
I feel like they need to know that they are valued for who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
They need friends, they need to belong.
Yeah, that was part of when we were building a mission statement, we were like, mission statements are kind of weird. Nobody ever remembers them, but at our high school, we're like, let's just make it 3 words. We probably can remember that. And then it grew into something else, and it's been awesome. The friends and the belonging at our school has been important to getting it started. Anything else? Those are big, awesome ideas.
I just really feel like right now they need to feel alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And through the program, they need to be challenged.
Yeah.
So they can accomplish and know they can do hard things.
Yeah. I always come back to, I don't know where, when I was very young, I had a mentor teacher who always said things like, oh, like my friends, when I go to like little social parties and they're all like bankers and real estate agents and all these other professional things, and I'm the teacher, and they're like, oh my gosh, how do you deal with kids these days? And as a music teacher especially, you just like take that right in the heart, and you're like, do you know what kids these days can do? Like, I couldn't do it. They have to manage outside in the peripheral, and then also just the rigor of school as it's gone up. I mean, when I was a student at Central Valley, we had 2 AP classes, and I don't think you could take both of them. I think you had to pick, like, you're either gonna be a science AP or a math AP kid. And now it's just like a rat race of like, how many of these can we take? So, anyways, anybody else have another way to look? Yeah.
I think they need to feel grounded in a virtual world, because everything is created to look
like
bigger, better, faster,
some
stronger.
tactile things.
Yeah.
Everything's like in this little palm-held computer.
I feel like they need a sense of identity, like who are they, and to be confident in who they are so that they can have that strength to share with others too.
Yeah, it's fun. At being a high school teacher, I taught middle school for a little bit, but when I got to high school, what I really valued about that part in their life is you really get to kind of be there and hold their hand when they find their tribe. And there's like nothing better than that. Like when you see a kid who's like, I'm supposed to be a band kid, or you hear a kid coming in talking about golf all the time, and you're just happy that like, cool, you can still play your instrument, but also like, man, that's so cool that you are a golfer and that's like your thing that you're gonna be known for. So those are all great pieces, and we'll touch on a lot of them throughout this little walk. So I'll just do an introduction of like a little bit about like who I am and where I stay grounded on these things. We'll share some stories. You shared some, like, these are things that like I've seen or heard. Some of them are amazing legends that are not true, and some of them are things that I think would be good conversations. And then we can just talk about like actually like, like what do we put on our tool belt to help our kiddos in our villages. So this quote has just always been something I feel like as a parent too, like we all know that we have like the power to just like crush something, whatever that little spark that might be happening, and it might be a like, hey, don't talk to me like that kind of spark. They're trying to like find some boundaries. It could also be that spark of like, hey, I got like a scheduling conflict with school, and Like what do I need to do? And as a parent, they come to us. I remember very emotional issue. My son had a hockey game and Science of Olympiad on the same day. And hockey's all the time. Science Olympiad happens like once in like 10 years it seems, and now. And I just remember like sitting down going like, oh my gosh, I don't know the answer. Because he really didn't like his Science of Olympiad team, those weren't his people. He tried it, he was going to all the practices and all that stuff, but he was like, I don't like this, and hockey is like my life. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't quit things and you fall, you know, and it was just, so we'll get to those kind of things, but I just remember feeling like, ooh, I have so much power right now. I was really scared. So he went to Science of Olympiad, but anyways. And I think he got like dead last at everything, and I'm like, yeah, so it's just like hockey. I'm a music teacher. Pretty much this is kind of how I drive to work every day, thinking about this, that I don't want to lose my opportunity, and as a parent, I look at those things too, those moments. That Science of Olympiad thing, somehow I made a mention of it on Facebook, and now every year it haunts me. Like, it pops up, because the only thing I care about on Facebook now is like 4 years ago you were doing this, because that was cool back in those days when I worried about like 6-year-olds and 8-year-old things, you know? And so it's cute to look back at those things, but that Science of Olympiad one comes up every once in a while, and I'm like, oh my gosh. This is probably something, if you went and took any kind of psychology class, you've probably heard of this concept, and a lot of you were saying literally these things, and this drives what teachers call social emotional learning. It might be something else on the internet, but this is what we base it around. That kids have a base, like this is their baseline. See, I got a cool pointer. I made it right here. And this will pop up a lot of times, but I made some cool memes. This is kids. They're so needy. There are things that they need. And it can be so tough right now because they have access to the world in a way that we really can't identify. Well, maybe some of you can. Some of you look very, very spry. But a lot of us are like, there's no way I could deal with what happened this week and having it sent to my phone where I live and my friends are, and it's like supposed to be the sandbox, but it's like just messy and dirty, and it's tough. So just kind of coming back, the physiological needs are just the basics, like literally breathing, eating, drinking, cleaning, dressing, other things, all right? That's just like, everybody needs that. That's really, really important. We're going to come back to the impact and the power of just that in our school and our kids. These are other things that maybe we kind of see them, but I'm telling you, high school kids are thinking about this probably more than they should, in my opinion, because I'm not giving a seminar. And then sometimes I hear this kind of conversation, like I want to explore this in college, but I know I won't make any money doing that. And I'm like, man, if you go to Harvard, I've had the fortune of teaching kids that got to go to Harvard. And they get the freshmen together and they tell them, if you get a job because you went to Harvard, we will be disappointed. Harvard, you're here at Harvard to make the job, to make the career, to make the thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I love that attitude in the sense that it fosters creativity even in this really super competitive world of Harvard. I don't know that kids think about this, but I do. And I'm a person, and we all work the same way. So when we come back to just love and belonging, this is, you guys said it, this was all in your words. And you can see that that's right there. That's building up on this pyramid. And then students love jumping here really quickly. They love being recognized as a section leader or a president of a club or all of those little things, and just special recognition. and it's good. I remember celebrating that a kid got their driver's permit this year at marching band camp. We were just like so excited for Alma McDonald. Like, Alma McDonald, we got her in the middle and we just like went like a football team, and it was hilarious. So those things, it's fun to feed those things and to find anything that a kid can be recognized for. Taking out the trash at home. My son is, right now, we have these horribly dirty trees. They like spill like this giant clumps of yellow pollen, and he's like out sweeping it right now because I gave him money. Oh wow, how did you get him to do that? The old-fashioned way. You know, I definitely like lowballed him on my price, but like I'm watching him, I'm like, hey, check your bank account and put like an extra $5 from what I said I'd pay you or whatever. Just like a little moment, definitely not worth the money, but like it's worth that moment of just kind of like cha-ching, you know, for his whatever this pyramid thing is. And then I think we talked about this self-actualization is kind of, you know, when a kid really feels like they know who they are. They find their tribe, they find their people, their friends, a friend group. I had no friends when I moved here. I moved here in the middle. I was just finishing 8th grade, and I was excited to go to high school, and then my parents were like, in the middle of my 8th grade year, just kidding, we're moving to Spokane from Los Angeles, and it's different. And we moved in December, so it's like smack in the face different. And then it was really hard to make friends because I didn't really understand the different cultures. And then I also found out I got to go to middle school for an extra year because it was a junior high school. So I did an extra year of middle school, and then when I got to high school, I'm like, man, there's one thing I'm gonna do on the first day, and that is quit band. And I was gonna quit band, but there was somebody that I wanted to be like, I wanted to know her. And she said, there's a seat next to me, sit next to me on the first day of band. And I mean, that didn't turn anything, but like, it was just a good, like, that moment of like, these are my people. Like, somebody just said that there's a seat next to them and I could sit there and there was no judgment on anything. And so creating that environment is important at home too. That you can come talk to me about anything, even if it's the most horrifying, embarrassing thing. I'm curious, where's Ethan's dad? Oh, like the song that he sang in the musical? That's the best thing, the funniest thing ever. But I'm just thinking about all the parents in here are like, yeah, but I had to explain to my little kids why everybody's laughing in that song. It was like a song about the birds and the bees that he sang. So here's the problem with what we're dealing with in school, and it's happening at home too, but we basically told them that the world is no longer, your physiological needs, your base, is no longer safe. It's not safe to breathe the air, it's not safe to be too close to people, and while we were mitigating risk and all those things, it has changed and reprogrammed all of them. And some of them are really good at coping and working through the fact that like, oh, I gotta work on climbing my ladder again, because like by the time they were supposed to be in high school or middle school, they were supposed to be like way closer to the top of the ladder. Like they were supposed to have like a friend group, hopefully. They were supposed to be, you know, maybe dabbling in things that were like their identity, that self-actualization. And then when we said, oh wait, no, you have to go home from school because you can't even like be here, it's not safe, it really just, it blew it all up. And I don't mean to make this like, this isn't like COVID seminar, it's just the fact of it is that we told them that it was dangerous. And while it was dangerous, we also had, and mostly, even more so, unknown. It was just one of those things that like, as teachers, we're sitting at home going like, oh my gosh, like this is tough. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my kid at home for like, what ended up being like almost a year. It wasn't just that though. The other side of it that understood this piece pretty well, just made me realize that like all these kids are gonna be thrown back down to the bottom of the ladder. And kids are pretty resilient, we're finding that, but they're not equally resilient. You probably have, I'm imagining many of you have more than one kid. One of those things that I'm kind of guessing. And I mean, they all are very, very unique. When we started, we were probably like, no, man, they're gonna all be like, they're gonna be this way and that way, and you know, in our house we're gonna do it this way, and it's like, oh man, like it just doesn't work that way, and you have to kind of find different, like, oh, you're a square peg, so here's a round key, and whoops, no, switch keys, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's been tough, and we're just getting started on delivering things to kids, and in some cases, I mean, a lot of you are Ridgeline parents, I understand, but even if you're a Central Valley High School parent, we did this to their building too, because then we also said like, hey, your friends, boom, your friends, boom, and some of you went through that, and some of those kids already had been through that if they were at Green Acres going to Selkirk. So it's been really like this crazy layer in our neighborhood. It's been really difficult on this side of things. So, you know, this little Michelangelo quote kind of makes me think about like, all right, well, this is going to be hard, but like I want to aim for like helping kids. So, and I know all of us do as parents, and really we're not just parenting our own kids, especially in a community like your church. Like you clearly understand that there's a village or a Venn diagram or whatever that your kids are included in lots of different pockets. I mean, obviously, like your home is the main highway of everything, but I think it's just really important to recognize that we can work on this together, and that's kind of what we go for. So, so stories. I had to talk about this first one because he said that, Kevin, you mentioned that you heard I turned a whole bus around because a student brought drugs on this trip, on a van trip. I think that's a great white lie that we should keep, like, nobody brings drugs on the trip because Parker's crazy and yeah. I have had students that are doing things. I did have a student that was in some serious trouble, and he was no longer allowed to be in the marching band, and we got him out. He actually went to a recovery program, and I gather from information that I have that he's doing well now. But I think when we were talking about pushing kids to do hard things, somebody had mentioned that they're capable of so much, which is true. I think also being tough on them when they do hard things, you know, for us to accept that, like, oh no, this little kiddo is like in serious distress, but I might have to be the bad guy right now to show them how much I love them. And I really did care about this kid. I was super disappointed of what was going on, but so that might be when that was like the first story that came to my head, because three kids came to me and said, you know, so and so's here and they're high and they're using like some medicine that they found at their parents' house, and they've been doing this for a long time. And what ultimately kind of helped was they were selling it really cheap at school, like too cheap, and everybody was talking about it. And that ultimately was what got like the pieces to be there. But that was just a story that you had mentioned, and I'm like, well, I'll address where that probably came from. But band has not been a place where I see a lot of, I don't see a lot of this. I do probably see more than the normal share of students that are talking about self-harm, suicide, ideation, like talking about those things. I pulled a kid off of a rope that they made in the bathroom, like at our school, several years ago. And I don't know where that is I don't know where that's coming from. It's what we're all like, it's the scariest thing. I know it's been in all of our communities, whether it's a church circle or a school circle or a friend circle. The biggest thing that like I try to take as when I talk to my kids, my actual kids, my biological kids, is just the fact that like if anything I hear, I just assume that it's true. Like if somebody's in a lot of pain, hey, my son said that this kiddo's like struggling and has been talking about something. You know, I always like first thing, like let's sound all of the alarms, even if it's embarrassing or maybe even the parents are like, I don't want it to get out. Well, I'm not trying to get it out. I'm not like telling all the kids people's business, but the kids that are the stakeholders, they're helping us circle the wagons. So that's a heavy burden, and for all of us to know that like our kids are hurting at times, but like knowing where they're coming from that social emotional ladder, I think can help us just identify that like, you know, kids sometimes say things where I'm joking, but just that extra minute to sit down and say like, yeah, but are you sure? Are you sure you're joking? Cause like, I just need to hear that, you know, it doesn't need to be more. And, for the most part, you know, we just kind of like hold hands, you know, as a community and try to like get connections, you know, through church, through school, counselors sometimes, but somebody that's trusted. Do you guys have like the concept of like, it like in a structure, like we at school talk about like, everybody needs to identify their trusted adult at the school, cause right, like you most likely aren't there at the building. So we talk about that. It was something that we started at Central Valley for, I don't know why, but I mean, I know why, but I don't know like the particular, like what made it come forward or start moving, but that every kid, we would like give them like an advisory, a little class list to like write down who are your trusted adults and all that stuff for them to practice. So it had been helpful. I knew a lot of kids that came to me to tell me stuff, and sometimes it's like, you know, somebody drank out of my water bottle at practice and it was gross, and I'm like, oh gosh, that must be hard. But I mean, then there's those times where you're just like, oh my gosh, I heard so-and-so talking on the bus and they were really disappointed and they got dumped by their girlfriend and they're saying this now, and you know, it's been good to have that. So I'm sure that it's implied just through like lessons in church, but I think being as intentional as you can about it, that it's not like, don't assume that they're picking up on the subtlety of the message sometimes. I think that's probably our biggest as grown-ups. I'm required to say, when I say I'm a grown-up, I have to do that. But I think just knowing that they're super smart, they pick up on things, but they don't necessarily, when we think it's subtle enough and under a good undertone, it can be tough for them to see it that way. Self-confidence, how do we help in our school program? It's just basically by delegating, giving people a little thing. Like today I was talking to a kid who they think that they're only capable of this much. Like, I can play this drum, that's all I can do. And we're saying like, no, next year you're gonna play all these drums. And they're like, I don't think I can do that. And I'm like, well, that's what you're gonna be doing. So you got that part, congrats. And it's like, but I'm so nervous. I'm like, congrats. Like just kind of like continuing to just talk to them, building that trust, being a trusted adult for them, I think is important. Intentionally being trustworthy. And we have a lot of stories about, I mean, you guys have, your kids are in the program where, you know, you find that the trumpet kids are going out, the trumpets are teaching each other how to do the trumpet part. It's just like one of those things that I think is really good, like give them things to do. And at home, I haven't figured that out as well. I don't know if it's cause like at home I've only been a teenager parent. Like every year they keep changing their age, right? It's like really confusing. Whereas at my job, they're always the same age. You know, it's like they're always the same age and then they go away after 4 tries. So like our own kids, it's been kind of funny to figure out, like, you know, like my son mows the lawn, that's great, but I'm sure a lot of you watch your kids mow the lawn and you're like, oh, I would have done it different. But just letting go of those things is probably the biggest thing. And that's, I mean, when it comes to like my job, what my job taught me is that like, there's a bad concert or a bad performance or a bad rating or a score from a judge. It just doesn't matter because they're like your kids, you were in the classroom with them, you know that their battle was this. You know, I have an elementary school teacher who talks about like the SBAC test won't tell you about how this kid who's taking the test used to hide under the table for a 2-minute quiz that we did in November. You know, the test doesn't show that stuff. So I think just one of the things that we constantly do at school in the music programs is try to have the kids reflect on, do you remember how bad you used to be at this? And listen to you guys now. Sometimes we use like a metronome that like ticks for the tempo. And just yesterday we were talking about like how good they sounded at this tempo that we were playing it at, and it was twice as fast as we had introduced the concept months ago. And so I think just kind of helping kids look over their shoulder to reflect is good. Teenagers don't reflect. They just want to look forward because they want to like get the next thing, like the diploma, the job, the college entrance letter. They want the next thing. And we're on the other side of that. We're like, you're growing up too fast and like everything needs to slow down. So it's such a trick. And it's been interesting from school to home, because at school as teachers, again, they're the same age all the time, and then they get up and they leave, and sometimes they stay in touch. But it's interesting. I love teaching, but I'm always excited for them to move on. Whereas like I'll be excited when my kids like move out at some points, you know, like, oh, I don't have to clean up after them this much, or you know, grocery bill might go down or whatever. But like those aren't like the real meaningful things. I'll miss, you know, just like watching Obi-Wan Kenobi at midnight or whatever. Not that we did that. On school night, that's not responsible. The other thing that Kevin and I had talked about was anxiety and butterflies. How many of your kids like do something where there's some performance involved, like music or a sport, something where it's like, all right, get up and do that thing. I know you guys, it's because kids will come talk to me about, I gotta do a talk at church this week. I know that's a big thing, and they'll ask me, because I'm a musician, how do I get over my butterflies? And I'm like, oh, no, your butterflies are there they're there forever. Like, you get them, those are yours. And some of us are like, I'm good at, like, some of you have probably found out you're okay at public speaking, and some of you are like, nah, that's not for me. And I just try to encourage kids to think about butterflies as, one, a reminder that what you're doing is important. Like, you want to do a good job. If you're nervous, it's because it's important. And then I ask them to work on living with their butterflies, so that they just know that they're there, again, to remind them that this is important, that you're standing up there, knees shaking, because this is important, that whatever you're about to share means something to you. And sometimes that the hope is to empower them, like, those butterflies are your power. We talked to the kids in the music theater department at Ridgeline. I talked to a lot of them were band kids, and we talked about, like, your butterflies are your power. And to think of it that way, is it a Jedi mind trick? Yes. But like, that's what all of this is just like redirecting, you know, their initial like primal instinct to be like, no, I'm scared, they're all laughing at me. And then try to say like, no, they're there to see what power you have. You need to, we say unleash, because that's just kind of like our mindset with teenagers. I don't mean to like have them come home and rip your wallpaper off, like, I'm unleashing my butterflies. But yeah, that's always been something like, how do I get over my nerves? And I just try to let kids know it's not really the healthiest way to approach it, because most of you will not win. I mean, I don't get nervous about things I used to get nervous about, but I think that's just the power that I took over those things, and I'm sure you all have little elements like that in life that felt that way. All right, so then the last kind of thing I thought we could just talk about is what can we do? And some of these, I wouldn't say these are things I do as a teacher. In fact, half of these I haven't. These are things I've learned in teaching seminars, teaching school things that I'm like, oh, that's really cool, but I wouldn't do that with my like students. That's too like, I'm a pretty like, I would say I'm a pretty vulnerable teacher. Like my kids have seen me probably cry. My kids have seen me like just lose it and have to stop teaching the lesson for the day because I'm just cracking up about somebody that said something that reminded me of something else. Like I feel like I'm pretty human in front of the kids, and that's probably why they think I'm kind of fun or whatever. But when I hear some of these things, I think they're great. Like if you really are working with maybe it's like my leadership kids who I probably need to know a little bit closer because I put a lot of trust in them, or my own kids. Like these are good things to know. Like what makes you tick? We don't always ask them directly. We just think we know because we think we should know. But sometimes we forget we should know because we asked. And they'll surprise you. And then also, like this one I love using with my leadership kids, because I just know that we talk about with our leadership kids that it's like about how you make people feel. So I try to practice like, be proud of something you did, so that hopefully they can be proud of like some kid that was in their section that was terrible at something and figured it out, right? Like just grew from it. So those are fun little things. This is really just kind of like a simplified version of that very graphic-y chart. It's just helping kids figure out like where they are in the plan of growing. There's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers. Does anybody know that book? It's a pretty good book because it'll sit down and kind of talk to, it's written for teenagers for sure. It's based off of, the author's dad wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and then his son wrote like a cooler book that has like cool little graphic things in it and all that stuff. But it's a good book. It has kids sit down and like talk about your boundaries now. Like don't wait till you're in the throes of passion, like because that's not a good time to like make life-changing choices. Like sit down and like have those conversations while you're maybe not at the dinner table, but like somewhere that's just more like you could be more thoughtful. And I think that's a good part of reflection and just trying to get kids to figure out ways to do that, because it really does create better connections. These are some prompts that I'll show you here in a second, but I can share this with you so you don't have to like take pictures of it, because some of it might be hard to get the fidelity out of, and you don't want to have to recreate the wheel if you want just these things as like something to look at. But finding like, here's a list of emotions. Some of these are really simple, like happy, sad, angry. But like mischievous and silly or quiet can be an emotion. It's not necessarily just an emotion, obviously. You can make up your own list of emotions with your kid that you're trying to kind of like figure out. And then you just find, like, let them explore like art, like creative things, like things that they can, that aren't so like open, or excuse me, that aren't so closed. Like this song is sad because it's called Saddest Song in the World. Like, okay, like that's fine if that's as simple as it needs to be, but we're playing a song by the Beatles called Hey Jude, and Hey Jude is about John Lennon's son going through John Lennon's first divorce, the divorce before Yoko Ono. Anyway, so it's this song about divorce, and then at the end it's na 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 na, like, why is it so happy? Doesn't make sense. And so in class we've been talking about it because the kids actually sing the na 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 na, they sing that part, and we're trying to kind of figure out that, and I've just kind of been letting them talk about it, like how do sad words explode to that? And it's been like, oh, it's like the world singing back to the boy saying like, hey, you'll still have your chance at love, and like it's not all broken forever, and all that kind of stuff. So those are fun things for kids to do, and they love sharing websites or URLs. So they can fill it up with a YouTube thing. You could have like little playlists that you share in your family. Like everybody has their own playlist of these 5 emotions or something like that your family's either working through maybe grief or something exciting. It doesn't have to always be sad. It's like we always like when something's sad, like, all right, let's work on it. Instead of like, hey, everything's going great. How come? Let's work on it. And so we can record it and come back to it. And again, I'll get this to Kevin so that you guys can have those little things. These are not things I do in my classrooms. I do them in small groups with students, and then my son and I. My daughter is like this happens like 10 times a day with my daughter. She's just like, this song, it makes me do this thing and blah, blah. Like she's just like kind of, my son's a little bit more like, what's going on in there? Like he's really nice and kind, but sometimes I'm worried that he's just like putting it on, and there's some, like, I'm just like, what's going on? So we'll like kind of like use music or art and sometimes memes to express things that we're thinking about. So this other one, this is just kind of like a little bit more about like having kids make a story about themselves. I'll preface this with, there's a book that I'm living out of right now, called Upbeat, and it's written by a musician, and you did such a good job conducting today, and it's about, right, you were conducting.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're trying.
Yeah, it's good. I know, I probably made you super nervous. I have a master's degree in conducting. But you were great.
Very nervous.
But like there's a thing, like as a conductor, that you think about every time you start a group. It's called the upbeat. Like I can't just say, go, and the music starts. Like I have to go, now go, right? That motion up is the upbeat. And this author, he's like, yeah, you have to talk about upbeat as like a get-to mindset. Like you don't have to get up and go to school today. You get to go to school today. You get to like change people's lives. Even as a kid, you are changing people's lives because there's kids that need you there, because of that like hierarchy of love and belonging. So anyways, it's just kind of a fun way to do that. And there we go. So we just practice in class every Friday, although I've given them the last 2 Fridays off and they have celebrated, even though it's a 90-second assignment, but whatever, just kids. And our get to attitude, GET, is gratitude. And I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, I'm certain it was some kind of like, hey, all of the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are going to, on Facebook, say amazing things that they're grateful for. And I remember my Facebook like totally changed because I am friends with a lot of you. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. The gratitude thing is like so powerful. And when you share your gratitude, then you can start to find even more things you're grateful for. And so it's perpetual in that way. Enthusiasm, I'm a pretty enthusiastic person, so I want my people to be finding those things. And again, just practicing. Did I spell that? I've had a lot of spelling things I've noticed. Treasure, just finding things that you treasure. I think that gives us power, to like, oh my gosh, I so value like my parents this week were helping me through a thing with Science of Olympiad, and just whatever it is. I just have kids practice it once a week. I make my son talk to me about it because in some level this is a little bit anonymous when they do this for me, but I make my son talk to me about it because I want to know like, what are you practicing? So, and I just think again a lot of it is these little things that can be formal or not, but being intentional about it. And then I just remember as a parent, to give myself grace because like everything that I'm trying to do as a parent seems impossible. Like I want you to feel safe here. I want you to like feel like you have freedom to express yourself, but also like you have to follow the school dress code or whatever those things are. It always feels impossible because there's other people to consider, or there's rules, or there's a standard that we want our family to adhere to, or whatever. So it's kind of daunting to think about all those things. So I guess I'm just curious, like I know we were gonna have like a Q&A, and I don't know if I was like way over, like, if that was a lot of information. But I do think that it just comes down to those basic 5 pieces, you know, the needs that they have to just like know that air they breathe is safe, and then, you know, just to know that like people care for them, that they can find love, and not just like but like, you know, just like people that care about them, because that leads them to that self-actualization of being in a group, a tribe, or a place that they belong. In different ways, right? Like I'm sure you want that in your church, like here's my people in the church, and then at school, and then on their hockey team or their soccer team. I think that part's really fun. I know I coached hockey for a while, and that was so hard to find, like such diverse kind of kids in hockey. And like some are there because they need to punch somebody. Some are there because they love hockey and they just heard like they just have to dodge some punches every once in a while. And then kids that are like literally like 15 years old and haven't ever skated before and their ankles are about to break, you know, and it's like, wait, but like you're gonna get killed if I put you out there because these other kids have skated since they were 5 months. So all those things have been fun, just like little insights into how the world is different. Teaching band is definitely, and orchestra is definitely like the cream of the crop. There's definitely kids that are hurting and doing the wrong things and on the wrong path to stuff, but it's probably a small percentage next to like what I would call gen pop. The whole schools, you know, ratios and stuff. So, but I'm just curious if there's questions, comments, concerns, things that you specifically